In this exercise, I'm going to give you an example of how you can use a layer effect, specifically inner shadow, in order to achieve an organic effect inside of your composition. What I'd like to do is take this word carving right here and make it appear as if it's actually carved into the wood. So I've gone ahead and restored the original version of wordprocessor.psd found inside the 12-layer FX folder. And I'm going to switch to my carving layer. And you might notice that early on here, I'm going to be working with text layers and shape layers and so forth. Don't get the idea that layer effects are somehow strictly useful for those kinds of specialty layers. You can apply layer effects to any layer that has a boundary associated with it. So any layer that has distinctions between opaque and transparent pixels. And we'll see examples of such layers in subsequent exercises. But for now, I'm going to select that editable text layer, and I'm going to click on FX, and I'm going to choose Inner Shadow. And the reason I'm going with Inner Shadow is because you can create a kind of carved out effect using it. Notice if I raise the distance value, I'll take it up to, I don't know, 20, let's say for now. And then I'll tab down to the size value and raise it to 20 as well. And we get something of a stencil effect, as you can see right here, where these letters are cut out of the wood and we're revealing this kind of weird beige background. Well, that is an effect. That's not the effect I'm looking for, so I'm going to apply a few more adjustments here. First of all, I'm going to change out this color. Now, you can stick with black for your shadows, which is the default setting, but I'm a believer that you either go for a color that's endemic to the image, or you go for a complementary color. And let me show you what that looks like. I'll go ahead and click on this color swatch to bring up the color picker dialog box. And I might move my cursor out into the image window and click on a color in order to lift it. And I see, well, I've got a hue value of 26 degrees. In the past, when I've been playing around inside of this image, I found that 35 degrees is a little more indicative. So I'd have to click around some more to figure that out, but I'll go with 35 degrees for now. And then I'm going to go with the saturation value, just so we can see it pretty easily, of 100%. And I'm going to take the brightness value down to 20%, and we end up getting a deep brown shadow, as you can see here. The other option would be to go with a complementary color. That is, we take whatever hue value we found inside the image itself, and we either add or subtract 180 from it, whichever is easier. And in my case, it's not obvious how I would subtract 180 from 35 degrees, but I can add it, and that would take me to 215 degrees. And then if I tab down, you can see that gives me a shade of blue, which is a complement to the oranges inside of the composition, and I get a complementary color for the shadow, which might serve me very well, incidentally. So you might want to play with that inside of your compositions. However, for my part, I'm going to stick with that value I had a moment ago, 35 degrees, and then I'm going to click OK. So I've got a brown shadow at work here. I'm going to live with a 75% opacity value for the moment. Notice the blend mode is set to multiply, and we will be discussing blend modes in all sorts of exacting detail in the mastery portion of this series. I'm saving it out because for now, I just want to keep everything colloquial where blend modes are concerned. In the future, though, we're going to get down and dirty with these guys. But note for our purposes here that multiply is going to result in a shadow effect. So if that's what we're trying to achieve, multiply is our guy. The other guy we might try, the other mode that is linear burn. Color burn ends up giving a sort of a hypersaturated effect, so it doesn't usually work. And then darken is just lame for these purposes. Anyway, multiply is your first and foremost shadow effect. If that's not enough, you move forward to linear burn. You never use darker color, ever. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and escape out of there because multiply is just fine. And then I'll drop down to these options. Now, we're going to leave angle alone for now because we have use global light turned on. And I'll explain what's going on with global light in a future exercise. But for now, let's just give it the slip. We've got a distance value. Distance is pretty obvious. If we increase the distance value, then we increase the distance between the shadow and the thing that's casting the shadow. I'm going to take that back down to 20 for now. If we increase the size, though, it seems like we're just increasing the fuzziness or the blurriness of the shadow. Well, by default, we are, but the reason it's called size is because of this choke option right here. So let's take size down to 20 pixels for now. And as I raise the choke value, notice that I'm filling in that shadow effect. So if I take it up to 100%, then we have a hard edge shadow, as you can see right there. And now it's pretty obvious that the size value is affecting the size of that shadow. We're filling in the area at 29 pixels. We're revealing some of that background color at a lower value. Anyway, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the choke value up to 30%, and then I'm going to take the size value up to 55. And the reason is I'm trying to get some sculptural edges going here so that the letters truly appear to be carved into the wood. Now, they're never going to be carved into the wood if we're seeing this weird beige inside of the letters. So I'm going to switch over to blending options, which takes me out of the layer effects. So the layer effects are these guys that have checkboxes in front of them. Blending options affect the layer as a whole, and the first three blending options are identical to those listed at the top of the layers panel. So we have the blend mode, which is the same as that blend mode. They work together in tandem with each other. Opacity is that opacity value, and fill opacity is that fill value right there. So you may recall from a previous discussion that if you change the opacity setting, you're going to reduce the opacity in this case of both the letters and the layer effects as one because you're applying translucency across the layer as a whole. So I'm going to go ahead and take that value back up to 100%. When you reduce the fill opacity value here inside the layer style dialog box or the fill value over there in the layers panel, then you reduce the interior of the layer. That is the stuff that fills up the layer, whether it's colored pixels or whether it's color inside the text or what have you. You change the color of that fill independently of the layer effects. So the edges of the layer, the boundaries survive, and the layer effects go ahead and hang on to those boundaries. Anyway, I'm going to take this opacity value to about 20%, and then I'm going to change the blend mode from normal to multiply so that we're burning in those letters as well. Even though they have a very low opacity value, we get a little bit of burn going there. And that's it for now. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on the OK button in order to apply that effect, and we can get a sense of what we've accomplished here if I press Control-Z, because this was all one big operation here. So I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac in order to undo that modification. Those are the original letters. If I press Control-Z or Command-Z again, these are the affected layers, which is quite satisfying. So compare that to applying, say, the fresco filter, and we're actually getting somewhere very quickly, and we can change our mind anytime we like. And because this is an editable text layer, I can switch to my type tool and I can edit my text if I like so. Press the Enter key on the keypad to accept my changes. And we end up with an effect that's satisfying, it's flexible, low overhead, basically everything that creative filters are not.